Hey everybody, hope and pray that you're doing well today. As we come to our word from the word, and today that word is fabrication. Fabrication. We started off the week talking about Saul being fake, and today we're really going to kind of follow up with that, and now we have a fabrication. Now, as you look at it, he very well could have been telling the truth at the moment, but it ends up being a lie, not something that he held on to for very long. Now, I pray as always that you're reading along in all of these passages so you can see what's going on. But essentially, Saul, David is going to be the next king. Saul has been rejected as king. And so David is going to be the next king. David's not trying to, go after it any earlier than he's supposed to. He's patiently waiting for the Lord to tell him when the time will be. All the meanwhile, Saul, knowing he's been rejected as king, is almost just basically refusing to let go. And with this, he becomes upset with David, and upset to the point that he's ready to kill David. It really comes from jealousy that you see going on, that the people start praising David more than they were praising Saul. And that's all it basically boils down to. And he gets basically murderously envious of David. And so today I want us to see this fabrication that he says. Now, what's going on is Jonathan, a great friend of David's, but Saul's son, the heir to the throne, had it not been for all of this going on. And we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow. But today, looking at this fabrication, it's Jonathan pleading with his father, pleading with him, saying, why are you going to kill David without a cause? Basically, he gives a lot of good reasons right before this. And just a couple of those. I mean, look at what he's accomplished for Israel. And not only that, but, Saul, if you kill him, then you'll be the one that's guilty of shedding innocent blood. So here's what Saul says in verse 6, 1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 6. It says, so Saul heeded the voice of Jonathan, and Saul swore, as the Lord lives, he shall not be killed. Now, I'll just put it this way. It wasn't really that this was a prayer, and I know that's really what we've been focusing on, but it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to bring God into this. I'm going to swear this oath. I mean, that's basically that people would say that as they were, as God is my witness, essentially, how people say it today. Isn't it amazing how people all of a sudden want to bring God into the conversation when they're doing something that's evil? You ever notice that people will say that? People will use the Lord's name in vain all the time, but yet claim they don't believe in God. I'm like, you can't have it both ways. And so with this, it's as if Saul has gone on living his life the way that he wants to. He has repeatedly disobeyed God. And now that he's in this murderous rage against David, now that, okay, Jonathan has stepped in and at least calmed him down for a little while, he tells him, you know what? You're right. As God is my witness, David will not be killed. Now, if you just read down 4 more verses, I believe, you'll see it didn't last long. He was already trying to kill David. Now, David was returned to his job for a little while, so there is some time in there, but it didn't take long at all. There was no other significant events in between the time that he said this and the time that he gets upset again and is ready to kill David. But see, you say, okay, well, what does this have to do with me? What does this have to do with my prayer life? Well, we have to be careful with our own fabrications. Just because you include God it doesn't mean that what you're saying will come true. Right? I mean, let's step out of this for a minute and let's say that Saul was well-intentioned in that. Let's say that, yes, his intention was, you know what, Jonathan, you're making a good point, and I shouldn't kill David. We need to keep him around. He has been good for my kingdom. I mean, even if he was looking at it with the wrong motivation, a selfish nature, that he could say, okay, well, yeah, you're right. So maybe his intentions were true at that moment. But just because he said, as God is my witness, did not mean that when he was next tempted to be upset and ready to kill David, that temptation wasn't still going to be there and he was still going to have to make a choice as to what he was going to do. Now, how often do we do that same thing? We know we're faced with a temptation where we understand what God is telling us, that it's wrong. But yet we'll say, okay, God, you're going to help me. This is never going to happen again. But then the next time we're faced with it, we fall flat on our face. And it's because we fabricated this to think that, okay, well, just because I prayed about it one time, just because I mentioned God's name while I was praying about it, or even just because I was sincere at that moment, that means everything's going to be hunky dory and I'm not going to have to worry about it anymore. That's not the way God works. There still has to be obedience. Obedience is still necessary. We still have to follow through with what God's told us to do. And when He's given us a way out of temptation, we need to take that way and not try to go back around again. So let's be careful today and every day that as we're praying and as we're including God and as we're coming to Him in our conversation and even our confession of sin, that when we come to Him, that we do it with a sincere heart, but that we also understand that that means we still have to be working on this daily, moment by moment, day by day, week by week. No wonder Paul said to pray without ceasing, lest we'd all be fabricating each and every day. Don't think it won't happen to you, because pride comes before destruction and destruction before a fall. Saul didn't think it could happen to him. Really, even furthermore, you go on, David didn't think it would happen to him. Peter didn't think it would happen to him. And I bet you or I, we didn't think it would happen to us either. Something to think about. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.